Have you ever stopped to think about how power really operates in Washington? Not the carefully staged moments you see on C-SPAN, not the well-rehearsed speeches read off teleprompters, not the made-for-TV outrage that plays out every night on primetime news. No, real power doesn't live in the spotlight. It moves in the darkness, in the corridors where deals are made before the public even knows they exist. It operates in secret, where billions of taxpayer dollars shift hands without oversight, where laws are crafted long before they reach the floor for a vote, where the right connections in the right places can erase a scandal as if it never happened. But today, that darkness was being forced into the light. Inside the Capitol, the air was thick, not with humidity, not with the echoes of history pressing against its towering marble pillars, but with something far heavier, far more dangerous. Anticipation. Fear. That deep, gut-wrenching unease that only settles in when something monumental, something irreversible, is about to unfold. Beyond those massive columns, down the hushed, echoing corridors, past the security checkpoints where anxious aides whispered into their phones, the hearing room stood ready. And outside? Chaos. A sea of cameras, reporters packed shoulder to shoulder, murmured speculation rippling through the crowd. The mainstream networks had deployed their top anchors, the ones who didn't just report news but shaped it. Yet, even they knew, this was beyond their control. The true power players, the ones whose names never appear on ballots, the ones who make decisions from high-rise boardrooms and the leather seats of private jets, were watching, waiting. Because this wasn't just another political hearing. This was a battle for survival. And then he walked in. James Comer, a man of sharp instincts and even sharper words. He wasn't the kind to waste time with empty rhetoric. As chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Comer wasn't interested in political theatrics or soundbites. He was here for one thing: answers. And unlike the career politicians who danced around hard truths, he had no patience for games. No hesitation. No sideways glances. No unnecessary dramatics. He moved with the confidence of a man who didn't come to debate. He came to dismantle. In his hand, just a simple stack of papers. Ordinary. Unassuming. But for those who knew what was coming, those pages might as well have been a ticking time bomb. They weren't just about Schiff. They weren't just about USAID or the billions funneled through shadowy back channels. No, these documents pointed to something far bigger, something that, if proven true, could rewrite the narrative of modern American politics. Comer took his seat. The cameras zoomed in. The whispers died. And then, silence. Not just any silence. The kind that only comes before an earthquake. He glanced down at the papers in front of him, then up at the man sitting across the table. Let's talk about the truth, shall we? And with that, the battle began. 24 hours earlier, the halls of the Capitol were eerily quiet. But not the peaceful kind of quiet. No, this was the kind that came before a storm. The kind of silence that hung heavy in the air, stretching out the last few moments before something catastrophic erupted. Outside, the media frenzy had yet to reach its peak. But inside the Democratic National Committee headquarters, panic had already set in. Behind closed doors, in a dimly lit conference room, some of the most powerful figures in Washington were gathered. These walls had absorbed decades of whispered strategy meetings, crisis management sessions, damage control tactics, all designed to protect the party from disaster. But tonight was different. Tonight, they weren't discussing how to take down an opponent. They were trying to figure out how to survive. At the head of the long mahogany table sat Adam Schiff. His shoulders were squared, his expression composed. But the way his fingers gripped the armrest of his chair just a little too tightly, that gave him away. Around him, a dozen senior strategists, legal advisors, and party insiders exchanged uneasy glances. No one wanted to be the first to say it. But the fear? The fear in that room was undeniable. Finally, a voice cut through the tension like a knife. If you don't shut Comer down tomorrow, we won't protect you. Schiff's head snapped toward the speaker. The words had come from one of the party's top strategists, a man known for never sugarcoating reality. And in that moment, the weight of what was happening became clear. Schiff was on his own. A long silence followed. Not the respectful kind. Not the kind that invited careful thought. No, this was the kind of silence that settled in when a man realized just how alone he truly was. Schiff let out a slow breath and forced a smirk. "They have nothing," he said. His voice was steady. Too steady. The confidence in his tone wasn't real. It was calculated, designed to mask the doubt creeping in. Because if he showed weakness now, the sharks in the room would smell blood. But the strategist across from him wasn't buying it. "Do you really believe that?" A few heads turned. Others stayed fixed on their phones, scrolling through headlines, searching for reassurance that wasn't there. Schiff hesitated, a fraction of a second too long. And that's when the next blow landed. "Comer isn't coming for a debate," the strategist continued. "He's coming for blood." The words hit the table like a gunshot. And no one, not a single person in that room, argued. Because they all knew James Comer wasn't like the others. He wasn't after a viral clip. He wasn't playing for political points. He was systematic, methodical, and that made him dangerous. A younger aide, still naive enough to believe they could spin their way out of this, spoke up hesitantly. "Maybe we should get ahead of this. Leak something? Turn the narrative before Comer takes control." Schiff's patience was running thin. His voice came out sharper than he intended. "Leak what?" The words hung in the air. That was the real problem, wasn't it? There was nothing on Comer. No scandals. No skeletons lurking in his closet. And that was the nightmare scenario. Because Washington ran on leverage. On knowing who could be squeezed, who could be blackmailed, who had secrets to bury. But Comer? He didn't play by those rules. And that made him the most dangerous man in the room. Relentless. Unyielding. Worst of all, he had the truth on his side. And that's when the third blow landed. "If you stumble tomorrow," the strategist said, leaning back in his chair, his voice deliberately calm, almost casual, almost. "You're not just taking yourself down. You're taking others with you." Schiff clenched his jaw. He had survived storms before, weathered political attacks that would have crushed lesser men. He had maneuvered through the treacherous currents of Washington with skill, sidestepping disaster when others fell. But Washington had no patience for liabilities. No mercy for those who became a risk. And if tomorrow's hearings spiraled out of control? If Comer seized the narrative, exposed too much, or, worst of all, made it stick? His allies wouldn't hesitate. They'd cut him loose without a second thought. Now, he had just one night to figure out how to stop Comer. And now, 24 hours later, he sat in that hearing room, face to face with his adversary, bracing for the fight ahead. For a moment,